Hello to the pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippine. Welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. And this should be a really fun video because a lot of fun and exciting things happened in Week 16 of the NFL over this Christmas break. I hope you had a great Christmas break if you celebrated. And we also celebrated some great games. Obviously, my Vikings did not get it done against the Lions. And if you haven't checked out that raw reaction, make sure you check that out. Frustrating loss, but they're still technically in the playoff picture, and I'll make a video breaking down how the Vikings can still get in. That should come out in the next couple days. But for this video, we're going to go over all the fun things and best narratives that came out of Week 16. And before I do that, I just want to thank everyone for the recent support on my channel. I gained a good number of new subscribers over the last few days, the holiday, Christmas break, and I woke up on Christmas Eve with a huge number on my phone for the amount of views that came out of that Lions Vikings preview video. I think it's over 700 views now, which is a lot considering I made this channel only about a year ago and it takes a while to get going. So I'd like to thank everyone for the recent support, finding my channel. I'm really glad you liked it and that hopefully you're going to continue to watch it because, I make more than just Minnesota sports content on this channel. And I want to be able to put that out there and know that everyone can come, whatever fan you are. I would love for everyone to come in and see what I have in store on this channel because I have a lot of fun ideas planned for the off season and all that stuff. So thanks so much for your continued support of the channel, and I can't wait to continue making some content for you guys. But with all that stuff out of the way, all the sappy stuff, I'd like to get back to these storylines, we'll just start with Monday night, because everyone knows that was the main storyline. The Ravens made a serious statement last night, and it was a 33-19 victory. I forgot what the final score was, but I did know that it was domination on the Ravens' part. The 49ers even had to put together a pretty impressive drive 2 possessions before the game ended in order to even get it this close. Of course, Brock Purdy did end up getting hurt, but that was very late in the game. Sam Darnold came in and honestly did just as well, if not better than Purdy did. He threw 4 interceptions, Purdy did anyway, and the Ravens showed what they could do, not just on the offensive side of the ball, but even more on the defensive side of things. And I feel like I did not give the Ravens enough credit. I'm one to admit when I'm wrong. I have said that the Ravens were a very streaky team, and I do still maintain that their offense is very, I don't want to say I'll say it's exploitable in the sense that if you can put a good game plan together, this offense can end up kind of shaky. And, Lamar, obviously, it all comes down to if Lamar can play well. And when you set up an offense like that based off of a running QB, it's either huge reward or you have kind of a clunker of a game. Obviously, that's kind of evened out over the course of the season. Obviously, the Ravens have had a much better season than I anticipated, and it's been very impressive now as of late. But one thing I have not given nearly enough love to for the Ravens is that their defense has been balling. And I don't know, maybe it was the fact that they hadn't played a very strong schedule up to this point that made me feel like their defense was just scoring these defensive touchdowns and getting these turnovers based off of the bad teams they faced. I don't know, maybe I just turned a blind eye to it, but this game on Christmas Day or Christmas night really showed me that this defense is legit, and that if the Ravens do come into one of those situations where the game plan offensively isn't necessarily working, I came into this week still maintaining that if the offense doesn't get going, that they're screwed. And that's not the case. Now that I've seen the way this defense can play, it makes them an even bigger force in the playoffs, and it was a really impressive win. That being said, I still believe the 49ers, on the other hand, are the best team in the NFC at this point. It becomes a bigger conversation now after this game whether or not I still believe they're the best team in the league, because they did show some serious gaps in their game. The reason I still believe they're the best team in the NFC, though, is that obviously the Ravens put together a perfect game plan against the 49ers, and it doesn't necessarily, now that this loss happened, it's no longer the case that the 49ers are invincible, but I still do believe that the way they're set up makes it so that a stellar game plan needs to be put in place for this team to be knocked off their feet. And yes, it is true that if this 49ers team is knocked off their feet, some really bad stuff could happen. Purdy could end up playing horribly, but I still do believe that it is very difficult to do that. And the Ravens did pull it off, but I just still don't know if there's any other team in the NFC that can figure out a way to figure out this 49ers team the way the Ravens did. I mean, it was masterful, both in terms of the way the Ravens played and the way that the game plan rolled out throughout that week. I mean, I would love to have been in those meetings to see what it was that they preached and what they worked on to make it so that they had such a airtight plan against this 49ers team. I still do believe, though, that the 49ers are a fantastic team, and if they can get into a rhythm, they're borderline unstoppable. So I still feel like I have to put them as the best team in the NFC. But we'll go into it over the next couple of weeks if I still feel like the 49ers are that far and away best team in the league, because the Ravens really embarrassed them on Monday Night Football. Going into another matchup here, the Dolphins really proved that the whole narrative so far for the Dolphins is, oh, okay, but who have you played? The Dolphins put together a great season so far, but they have struggled against teams that have winning records, and they really proved that wrong. Of course, the Cowboys have had those road struggles, and that is definitely part of the reason why the Dolphins were able to win that a couple days ago. But I still feel like the Cowboys are a good enough team where the Dolphins have at least proved that they can get the job done against other teams besides these clunkers that they've gotten to play and these really bad teams they've played all season long. And what I think is most important about the Dolphins winning that game the way they did against the Cowboys is that they proved wrong that other narrative, which is that Tyreek is their entire offense, and that if Tyreek doesn't have a 150-yard 3 TD game, the Dolphins are going to lose. Tyreek Hill did have a good game still. Now he came up shy of 100 receiving yards, but he still put up 99 yards. He didn't get a touchdown though. I mean, the fact that this is less impressive numbers for Tyreek Hill proves how good he is and why I still maintain that he should be the MVP at this point in the season. But it's the fact that the Dolphins, I mean, I'm not going to count them all out, but that's almost 10 different targets that the Dolphins had that they completed more than a couple passes to in the course of this game. Durham Smythe got 56 yards. Waddle got 50. Cedric Wilson Jr. also got 50 or 42. And even Robbie Chosen and Alex Ingold even got some catches in this game. I mean, the Dolphins are spreading the ball out, and that is a direct contrast to what everyone's been saying, which is that if they don't get that game flow going with Tyreek, then they are screwed. I think that this coaching staff definitely heard those things that people were saying, heard those criticisms, and they have definitely used those over the course of the last few weeks and made it so that the Dolphins have a much better game plan going forward, and I think it's made them a much better team, that criticism. And people always say, don't listen to that criticism. I feel like to a degree you should welcome it, and I think the Dolphins have. They've made themselves a better team, and it results in this question: which team is now the best in the AFC? That's the next point I have here, the next storyline. And after the way that the Ravens played, I was very impressed that the Dolphins won the way they did. Like I said, even though it was a close game, the Dolphins proved a lot of those things wrong. But the Ravens, I think, made a bigger statement on Monday night, and so I still have to say that they're the best team in the AFC. But I was still very impressed by the Dolphins, and those are easily the two best teams in the AFC right now. Speaking of which, the team that I initially thought was going to be the best in the AFC, and the team that I think that everyone thought would be the best in the AFC, is the Chiefs. And this Chiefs narrative, after coming off of another embarrassing loss, this time to the Raiders, they are now completely locked. Well, they can still technically drop down to the 4th seed, but very unlikely that they do. But they can now no longer move up past the 3rd seed because a lot of people knew that they got eliminated from the 1st seed contention. But now what can happen here is even if the Bills win these next 2 games and the Dolphins lose and against the Ravens and they leapfrog in the standings, that would make the Bills and Chiefs tied for, with 6 losses, and then the Chiefs would not have the tiebreaker over the Bills. So long story short, the Chiefs can't leapfrog. Even if the Dolphins lose the next 2, they would leapfrog, and since the Bills beat the Chiefs are basically in the 3rd seed no matter what happens. That's all I'm trying to say, and I explain that in the worst way possible. I'll make a whole video about the playoff picture and explain it better in the next week or so. The Chiefs are going to have a really rough and difficult road now to the Super Bowl if they are to make it that far. I mean, it's just a different Chiefs team right now, and I have to say, the Chiefs' narrative is becoming scarily similar to the way that the Packers were operating as Aaron Rodgers got increasingly more frustrated with that situation, because all of a sudden it's that same thing where, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers said, all we got to do with the way that this guy is one of the most talented QBs we've seen in NFL history, all we have to do is put a bunch of offensive linemen around him, protect him well, and it doesn't matter who he's throwing to, he's going to make it happen because he is Aaron Rodgers. And surprise, surprise, as time went on, it became more and more difficult for him to try and overcome these hurdles with these wide receivers that were not very good. And it resulted in a lot of frustration with him and the organization. And I feel like the Chiefs are starting to go down that road. Now, I don't think the Chiefs are, I think the Chiefs are going to be smarter than that. I think they're going to start to understand that they can't do this forever and that they're going to have to start getting some wide receiver help for Patrick Mahomes. But right now, this season is feeling a lot like the Packers those last few seasons because Mahomes has nobody. I mean, he just has nobody. And I'm not saying that the current wide receivers he has aren't good. I'm just saying that he doesn't have that clear number one guy to throw to besides Kelsey. Kelsey is a fantastic tight end, one of the best to ever do it. Still don't think he's better than Gronk. I'm not going to lie. But he can't just rely on Kelsey because you triple team Kelsey, and then if you don't have anyone to throw to, Kadarius Toney's been absolutely awful. Mahomes, as good as he is, the most talented quarterback in the history of the NFL, in my personal opinion, it doesn't matter if you don't have anyone to throw to. And we've learned this year after year, and the Chiefs played with fire this season, and all the analysts were saying that it wasn't going to matter and that the Chiefs were still going to find a way. And I said that to a degree as well. I'm not going to deny that. But the Chiefs have a lot of soul searching to do in this offseason, and I'm personally hoping, because I'm tired of the same team making it year after year, and I know a lot of people are as well, not to mention the fact that a lot of people are annoyed with Patrick Mahomes based on the way he's handled things the last few weeks. It's nice that we don't have to deal with another AFC championship in Arrowhead. I still think it's possible the Chiefs find a way to battle back from their adversity, but I don't know, it's going to be tough for them this year, the way that things have been going. Amari Cooper with 265 yards and 2 touchdowns in their win over the Texans. I mean, I saw that number and I just couldn't believe my eyes. Joe Flacco with 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, and did throw 2 interceptions. But that's just unbelievable. There isn't a single quarter that they scored less than 6 points. And this Browns team is all of a sudden looking like it could run with a lot of these different teams in the AFC. Now, I still have concern for Flacco when he goes up against a seriously good defense. Like if he goes up against the Ravens in the playoffs, will he be able to maintain that same level of success? Will he be able to hold up in his older age? Those are definitely still the concerns when it comes to the Browns, but they're sitting pretty at the fifth seed, I feel like they're going to have the most favorable, for sure anyway, the most favorable matchup in the first round of the playoffs because they're going to have to play whatever team ends up getting spat out of the AFC South as the champion at this point. Who knows who it'll be? But then the Browns will go on to face a team like the Ravens or the Dolphins. And I think they honestly have a pretty good chance. I mean, they have proven everyone wrong that has said defenses no longer win championships. You need to have that MVP caliber quarterback and an all-star offense in order to make the Super Bowl. The Browns are going to try and prove that wrong this year, and I genuinely think they have a chance of getting past the second round. It's going to be a really fun second round of the playoffs, especially on the AFC side. And the Browns are, I mean, unbelievable. Amari Cooper again, 265 yards. That is now the record all time for the Browns franchise. Just impressive performance all around for the Cleveland Browns. And now that Deshaun Watson is no longer the starting QB for them, I can root for them again. And I know my friend is excited about it too. He's a big Browns fan as well. The Falcons, this is one, this is kind of a first take type thing where you see one game and you start to build up this whole narrative and you yell it out for everyone and they get mad. But the way I see Heineke play in this last game, I really think if Heineke was in, the Falcons could be winning the NFC South right now. Just seeing the way Desmond Ridder played and the way that he just blew up everything. And I'm not saying Ridder is some horrible QB, but he was not ready to just take up that starting role and run with it this season. And I believe that Heineke makes good decisions. And in this division, with some of the games that the Falcons have had the last few weeks, if they had beaten the Panthers, they would be right in the running for the NFC South right now. And they've also had other pretty easy matchups the last few weeks. I think that all Heineke needed to do in those games was not make bad decisions, and I think the Falcons would have won. But instead, they went with Desmond Ridder, and I don't know what could have happened to cause them to not want to go with Heineke, knowing he has proven experience as a backup and as a guy coming in. He's that calm, cool, collected guy, and it just feels like the Falcons had a missed opportunity there in a really bad NFC South. I understand they want to see what Ridder could do because the quarterback situation in the next few years for the Falcons is going to start to get really, mushy with what they're going to decide to do. But I don't know. I feel like that might have been a good decision to give Heineke the reins in the last few weeks here, and he probably will stay as the starting QB now as they finish off the season. And then finally, my last storyline here is, if I'm looking here at the NFL or NFC standings, the Vikings still have a chance to get in. That devastating news about Hawkinson's ACL and MCL tear is just really frustrating. Not only will that mean the Vikings don't have one of their top, options this year, now for the rest of the season, they now are most likely not going to have him for a good part of the 2024 season. Who knows how long it'll take him to recover from two different tears. It just, you never know. And tight ends are bigger, and so that might cause even more problems. So really frustrating for the Vikings. But we got the Vikings right now, we got Seattle, and we got Los Angeles Rams. The Falcons are kind of in play here. The Packers technically have a shot. And especially if they beat the Vikings, then they would have the shot that the Vikings currently do have. And a lot of tiebreakers come into play. The Vikings are 6-4 against the conference. Seattle 6-5, Rams 6-4. The strength of victory comes into play, and the Vikings technically have the edge over those two teams as well for that. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks. But the question that I decided to draw up for this debate, internal debate here, is which of these teams would be the most dangerous if you put them in the playoffs as a wild card seed, going up against either the Eagles or the Lions, depending on where they end up. And right now, the Rams are playing well. Matthew Stafford is proving a lot of people wrong, including me going into this season. I definitely didn't expect the Rams to be number 6 in the playoff picture right now. With all that said, I do think the Seahawks have the best chance. And the reason I say that is because they have the best receiving core left in those three. If Addison, Jefferson, and Hawkinson were still all in, I think it would be the Vikings that would have the best chance of pulling off. Well, even then, I mean, the quarterback play for the Vikings is just not that good. But I do think the Vikings would have the better receiving core if those three were in. I just think that because of the combination of Geno Smith, who is a capable quarterback, not he has not had nearly the season he had last season, but he's still capable. You throw in the fact that they've got Njigba, you've got Lockett, and then you've got DK Metcalf. Those three guys are the playmakers that could definitely disrupt things against a team like the Eagles or a team like the Lions. And it's just, there's something about the way that they were able to battle back in the game against the Titans. They've definitely come back and won against teams that they should have beat, but I also think that means that they have the capability. They've already beaten the Eagles this season, and so I think they beat the Lions as well, the very second game of the season. And so definitely capable of pulling off upsets. And so the Vikings fan in me obviously wants the Vikings to make it in. Obviously, if it comes down to the Seahawks and Vikings, I hope it would be the Vikings. But in terms of who deserves it, it's the Rams and the Seahawks, and I think the Seahawks have a much better chance of pulling off the upset, considering the way they've played and considering the fact that this receiving core is really starting to boom here in the last couple weeks of the season. So anyway, those are my main storylines for Week 16. Let me know if you disagree with any of these storylines. If you want to debate in the comments, I'm more than happy to do that. I always like to see what your opinions are. If there's a storyline I missed, also let me know. And just strap your seatbelts in and prepare for the last 2 weeks of the season. It's going to be so fun to watch these games take place. Going into the final week of the season, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, I'm going to do a full breakdown of all the different scenarios across both of the different conferences. I'm going to go into the NFL Predictor app, and I'm going to say, okay, if this team wins, if this team wins. If you are an NFL nerd, it'll be a really fun video to watch where all the tiebreakers are going to be explained by me, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll also go over how the Vikings can still make it in and do my typical Vikings-Packers preview, which you can watch on Friday of this week. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. That's all I can say. So thanks so much for watching this one. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the flip side.